Good afternoon. Welcome. I want to thank you for being here, joining us for a discussion on some important topics and issues. Today's presentation and discussion is to bring about an understanding of how the Economic Development Agency works on behalf of the cities and the county for future development and the impact that it will have on everyone who lives in the county. I'm Susan Kirk. I'm a member of the POA Governmental Affairs Committee. The Governmental Affairs Committee is a committee of 7 people, and our primary goal is to act as a liaison and an advocate for the village and as an educator of elected officials, indicating important things that need to be known throughout the community, but brought back also to encourage voter participation. I want to take a minute outside of this to announce we will have another forum on January 10th in Kahidi for candidates that will be on the March 5th primary ballot for Monroe. And so there will be more information coming out about that Kahidi Forum. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our speaker, and Jack Qualls. He is currently serving as the Director of Loudon County Economic Development Agency, established in this capacity for the past 7 years. As Director, he focuses on 4 major categories comprising of economic development, community development, transportation projects, and workforce development for Loudon County and its municipalities. His career began in 2008 at the Lincoln Trail Area Development District in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, as a liaison between Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and the 8th County Regional Development Agency, focused on rural transportation programs and projects for the state, including comprehensive economic development strategy. Prior to his current position, Mr. Qualls was a community transportation planner for the state of Tennessee Department of Transportation in the Long Range Planning Division. This grant program is a statewide initiative for small communities to compete for transportation planning opportunities. Mr. Qualls has a bachelor's degree in urban studies from the University of Tennessee and an accredited computer-aided drafting certificate from the Tennessee College of Applied Technology. So I'll bring up Jack Qualls to give us his presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. My name, as you said, is Jack Qualls. I am the director with Loudon County Economic Development, Loudon County Economic Development Agency. Mouthful this morning or this afternoon. I'll get situated here. We can do this kind of 2 ways. I can go through the presentation, or we can, and then ask questions, or we can stop and have more of an interactive. It's totally up to the group how you would like to participate today. Do we have a preference, or? Okay. Well, feel free to stop me at any time. I appreciate the questions that you may have. Economic Development in Loudon County, the agency itself it was formed in 2008. It's an interlocal agreement, which means that the 2 cities in the county and Committee 100 came together to form a agency for the four pillars, if you will, for economic development for our community. State law requires each county to have a joint economic and development board. And so our economic development agency is that board. And so some of the focus that we provide is, like I said, economic development is more for recruitment of manufacturing. It's dealing with expansions of our industries. It could be grants for downtown. That's more of a community type event. And then transportation is dealing a lot with the actual TDOT projects. We've been involved in some of that. I was actually involved when I was at TDOT with the Teleco 444 Greenway plan. So I was actually working for TDOT whenever that plan was developed. Other plans, this economic strategic plan is really, we got a grant through the 3-Star program, which is also conducted through the EDA. I'm going to use EDA. I'll throw out a ton of acronyms, and I apologize up front for that. But EDA, we got a grant. It was $50,000. We put out an RFQ, and we ended up hiring Annette, Muldrow, and Orion to do our plan. And so this plan is kind of an overview of what the community looked for as far as inputs, and also a database plan. So one of the things we wanted to ask them to provide is not just go out and survey our community and give us an idea of what the community wants, but also back some of that information up with data. And so the plan itself basically consists of five five topics, if you will. It's the public survey, which I just referenced. It's the strategic assessment, the market analysis, a vision and goals section, and then really a strategic action plan. So we launched this plan via email. We sent out, we did newspaper articles. We did online surveys. We sent out stuff with the Chamber of Commerce. At the end of the day, we got about 684 citizen responses for public input. We had 2 public meetings. One was held at the county annex, and one was held at City of Loudon. We also had business surveys. We had 45 responses of that. And so this is kind of the breakdown of, it was based on zip code. And so there wasn't really a zip code specifically for Telco Village, but a lot of people filled in the blanks for us, which was good because we wanted that input. And so 23% lived in Lenoir City, 25% in Loudon, 4% that participated in this was at Telco Village. Did anybody participate in the crowd? You did? What did you think about it, sir? Was it pretty decent survey, or? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I thought being noticed to participate was happenstance. I don't think, and it shows here with Telco Village, Philadelphia, and Greenback, that when your consultancy received these numbers, someone should have put up their hand and said, this isn't a statistically relevant return. What do we do to do better? Now, clearly, in my view, and I say this because I've been here before.
Sure.
I wasn't a planning and zoning commission. My municipality went through this process. It went through our commission. Been there, done that.
It's somewhat difficult sometimes to get that participation level that, and honestly, you're on a tight budget to begin with, and you've only got so many opportunities to try to get that input. And I do agree with you. I would have liked to have seen more participation. When you look at our population of, 58,000 folks, and we only got 684, I do feel that
Right.
it wasn't
And the other thing is, it didn't ask where we came from.
Yeah.
So you had a 44% increase in population since 2000.
Yep.
Yet nobody asked, the survey did not ask where we came from or why we came here. In other words, was it a work transfer?
Sure.
Was it a life change? Did we come from an urban area, a metropolitan area? Because all of those affect how we respond.
Absolutely.
And the last point I would make at this point is a number of folks to whom I spoke that also participated all made a reference to the lack of medical technology and services. And the report makes no reference to that.
Thank you for that input. You're correct. I mean, we ask, this kind of synopsis here of what you see of why are the greatest assets and responses is, I don't know if I can zoom in on this, but this is kind of the assets of why people like the area, and it doesn't really address the medical. So thank you. This is a living document. It's what I want to see this become. And so perhaps that's something we can include in the next rendition of this. When you go out and when you survey the general public, everybody has kind of a specific agenda, which is good. And I mean, it's sometimes hard to collect all those and spit them back out in a good way. Some of the ones that we were asked for the greatest area of need and common responses, basically we broke it into the 4 categories you have here in front of you. Is business. There was more requirement. People wanted to have more shopping and dining experiences, more entrepreneurial development, grocery store, theater, local restaurant, shops, entertainment. Employment, the next section was higher tech manufacturing, People want to see more corporate offices and a larger workforce. Housing was another item that came out of this, was affordability, quality housing, attainable workforce housing, rent or buy, and then a strategic plan for housing needs to be done in the county. Infrastructure is a better broadband access. That comes up a lot these days. Improved schools, sewer in the Greenback area, and then expanded natural gas were some of the comments of need. Like most SWOT analysis, you do the strengths, weaknesses, and the opportunities and the threats. And this is really a long-range plan. It's like I said, it becomes a living document. It's not going to be the fix-all, plan. It's going to take time to take what we have here as a ground level, because this plan has not traditionally been done, and then take and build that on as years go by. And so we asked the public to provide us with kind of what they see the vision of Loudon County over the next 10 years. It ranged from, the future from slow or no growth versus managed growth, high quality growth with diversity of housing choice, commerce, and employment. These were kind of some of the items that stuck out in the blue. Growing in a controlled and measurable way so we don't lose our small town or rural appeal. Number 2 is a community that serves a variety of needs to its residents with a quality of schools, parks, retail, dining, and employment. That we maintain small community atmosphere while growing quality businesses and improving education opportunities. Improvements on focusing for healthy families, green spaces, outdoor recreation, public transportation, walkability, preservation of the clean water and air. Another one is more collaboration between the cities. Create a vibrant, diverse community with choices for housing, childcare, and well-funded quality public school education, and a variety of affordable housing and employment choices. Last one was Loudon County too have a huge art and craft scene with weekly farmer and artisan markets, breweries, kayak, paddle, boat launches, and etc. So those are some of the desires that the community has identified out of the surveys that they would like to see in the next 10 years. Education shows up quite a number of times there. This question so far for me. Okay. So one of the things we looked at, another section, was the marketing analysis, and this is really just a snapshot of all the document. The document itself is it's online, and we've got a link to it, but it's fairly an in-depth document, and it has a lot of good information in it. And I'm just hitting the tip of the iceberg tonight to kind of give you an idea of what it consists of. But looking at the population change, you can see that we are one of the faster growing counties around our area. 15.9% is a change in population from 2010 to 2022. Knox County, compare that to Knox County, they were at 12.1, sorry. Most of the growth that's happened here in the last 10 years. Yes, sir.
On this chart, is Loudon County or Loudon City? And then you got Telco Village, and if it's Loudon County, you got Loudon County, there's 15, so you got the 2 cities and Telco Village by themselves.
So that's just county, that's in county specific. That's not taken in the other ones. So most of the growth that's happened, that's what I was getting ready to say, and thank you for pointing that out. Most of the growth that's happened in the last 10 years has been in the village.
So my question goes back to the survey, that you have survey questions that were answered to the point that was kind of made.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you either, sir.
My name's Gary Bush.
Hey, Gary.
So kind of to the previous question on the survey, points on the survey, because when you look at Telco Village, 31.3% of the growth is in Telco Village. And the majority of that growth is out of state, coming from 40
Sure.
to 50 states.
Yes, sir.
Other states. There's a reason people have come here. So those questions, how were those questions broken down from a demographic age perspective to saying, okay, we need these types of things? Because when you're in your 30s and 40s or even less, schools are the most important thing you're looking for.
Sure.
Okay, also business, certain types of business, so you've got a place to work and employ yourself. a lot of us, you know, the thing we're looking
Medical,
for.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
it's
get
your
it.
medical and stuff, so, again, clarifying that, because if the majority, the highest percentage of your growth has been Telco Village, within the village, what I've seen in the development plan is addressing a lot of other things that necessarily are counter what maybe Telco Village growth is really looking
Well,
for.
And honestly, and you're spot on. This is not, I would say this didn't focus specifically on Telco Village. There probably needs to be, again, more of a segment of a plan that specifically addresses Telco Village growth as well as Telco Village needs assessment. I mean, that would have probably been a more of a holistic kind of plan. There is a fairly large population out here. I mean, there's, 10,000 of you almost, so there is a segment of population. I was disappointed with the number of participants. I mean, obviously, that would have probably skewed some of the numbers too, on how these are, some of the ones where I had up earlier are focused, they're weighed. So you're seeing more of the ones that got hit over and over in the survey. But I do think you're right. When you look at the total population increase, it is majority here in Telco Village. Again, we were on a limited budget. You know, we were, I'm not making excuses, but yeah, I think we could have done a better job representing Telco Village. Is there any more questions? All right. Oh, technical difficulty here. See if I can. Age, baby boomers. This is looking at our county as a whole. I mean, this is a real eye-opener as the industrial recruiter when you're looking to recruit manufacturing to the area. 32% of our population is the age of 55 to 74 years old. That's tough when you're trying to recruit businesses. You know, when you look around our area, our median age is 47. Compare that to 40 in Knoxville. So again, really tough when you're trying to recruit business and manufacturing to the area. We are, you know, when I think of the village, I think of it as a resort. I mean, that's really what this is. And you guys make up, again, a large population. That number kind of threw me for a loop. I knew we had a large population here, but I didn't realize it went, I was thinking it would have looked more at 65 to 75, but down to 55. When you start looking around in our industries, a large population of our industry workers right now are over 55. And so when you're looking at the long-term benefit of employees and businesses and taxes, it starts coming home pretty quick that we have an aging population here and our workforce is aging. So household income, I mean, got one of the highest ones in the region. I mean, probably higher ones in the state. 38% of Loudon County households have an annual income of less than $50,000. So we've got two sides of the spectrum there. When you start looking at the demographics of the income, we have also that we're making higher money, but we also have a significant number that are making below 50. So. Sorry. Other things it did was in the study, it broke it into segments. So the segmentations of social groups, it kind of looked at kind of the life stage that you were just referencing, where we at, and I wanted one of you gentlemen where we're at in life. It was looking at, trying to see if I can zoom this in, younger life 9% versus the 33% of family life. Again, back to the education but the mature years, 58% of our segment. Yes, sir.
So when I saw this slide and the subsequent chart, overall, as I read through this page by page, slide by slide, I didn't feel warm and fuzzies about your consultancy. So, for example, for the Golden Ponds, to quote, daily life is often a succession of sedentary activities such as reading, watching Hallmark movies on TV, playing bingo, and doing craft projects. This is page 20. Really?
So this is taken from,
Well, yeah, I mean, what your folks did, which also explains how they claim that I-64 crosses through Loudon County twice in this document. But they had a template, and granted, you had only so many dollars, but they had a template. And they didn't account for the true breadth of demographics in the county.
no, they just took a national, I mean, that's the thing, I did not do this study, you're right. We hired consultants to do it. They basically took a national survey brand that's out there on the market. I'm sure they pay a subscription for it, and they copied and pasted it and plugged it in. So if that offends you, I'm sorry. But sometimes you get what you pay for, and we had $50,000 to do the plan, and that's not a lot of money when you're trying to hire consultants. So I keep reiterating that, it's a living document. And I think I'm going to keep coming back to that, just the simple fact that what I would like to see is this document grow. And I think that if I would have done it personally, it would have been done a different way. There would have been more meetings like this that I would have come out and publicly spoke at, and we would have collected more data. We didn't have a good turnout at the public meetings. One meeting we had 3 people, the other one we had 4. It's hard to get, the days of people picking up the newspaper and reading it are gone. The days of everything social media, we put it out there on Facebook, hoping people would pick up the survey and take it. You saw the results. It's tough to get word out. It's tough unless you come in front of people like this and have a dialogue face to face. It is hard to get public input these days. And just like your group, how many people did you expect tonight? And then how many people showed up? So it is difficult, but I'm sorry if it offended you. Would you like to tell us what you do in your spare time? All right.
A lot more than what they listed.
Right? I get it. I get it.
Think about the huge pickleboard court that we have here.
Yeah.
And it's busy all day long, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
3,000 members.
Yeah.
30% of our population.
I don't disagree with you. He's loud enough. I hear him. I hear him loud and clear. We're going to do a better job next time, is what I'm going to tell that gentleman and everybody else in the room, because, again, I would like to see this become a living document. And I think that's the point here is I want to come out here today and really give the findings. You've obviously read the report. Thank you for taking the time to read the report. Most people in the county haven't read the report. I would venture to say how many of our elected officials have read the report. So thank you. But when you start looking at our housing units, the median age of our housing stock in Loudon was in the 90s up until recently. And so most of the housing is older. When you start looking at the number of multifamily units, I mean, that only makes up like 8% of what we have. Let's see if I can zoom in on this. There you go. You start seeing more in the 2000s, but then it tapers off. And so you're not having that really significant boom in housing like it's been around us, which I'm not here to say that's good or bad. I'm just saying this is where we're at. This is kind of our worksheet of here's where we're at. Now, where do we go from here? That's up to the community. But 80% are single family, detached. You got single family attached, multifamily, mobile home and boat and RV. You've even got some of those. The point here is looking at the owner-occupied versus renter. I mean, it's 79% owner-occupied, whereas 21% is renter-occupied. Looking at the values, I mean, we have higher median housing here. Like this is a little bit dated, but a Zillow measure, which, take Zillow for what it's worth. Again, checking your data there, but it's reached 445,000 in August of 2022. Of course, housing market right now, with inflation the way it is, there's not a lot of houses selling. The housing market's kind of stagnant, but when you start looking at the rental, that out of that 21%, we start getting into the cities, 35% of the city of Loudon is rental properties, whereas 39% of Lenore City's rental properties. And so, again, looking at the rental rates, they're at 98% capacity. So when you start looking at this as a whole, how I interpret this is we do not have enough housing units currently where we're at. Again, am I talking single family? Am I talking multifamily? I'm just talking period. Yes, sir. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Sorry. 28% of those renters that I just referenced are cost burden, which means, and then 15% of those are severely cost burden, which means they're spending more than 50% of their income on housing. And that's pretty significant. Really, the takeaway from this slide is, when you look at Loudon County as a whole, if you're an educator, a single educator, if your profession is an educator, and you're making $41,000 a year, you cannot afford to buy a house in Loudon County. That's the takeaway from this slide. Even if you've got a household income of $78,000, the affordable house is $300,000. How many $300,000 homes have you seen on the market in Loudon County in the last 2 years? So, it's hard again. Yes, sir.
I'm a numbers guy. I've
Yeah,
done
go
that
ahead.
numbers from my whole career.
Absolutely.
So, especially when it comes to dollars and cents.
Yep.
So, this is a little deceptive also when we use the housing numbers as an average number. Because if you go back on page 22 and you look at your medium owned occupied housing in Loudon County and that type of thing, and then you kind of look back and you say, okay, the housing units and the cost of housing, that goes back on your median income in that, and you take out Farragut, Rarity Bay, and Tellico Village, and you look at where you've got Loudon City and Lenore City, there's a dramatic drop-off. You're talking, if you take the top three, which are basically right here in Rarity Bay, and I put Tellico Village in the same ballpark.
Sure.
And you take that, the numbers, rental units, in my opinion, rental units in Lenore City and Loudon City should be dirt cheap so that people can afford them. It shouldn't be based off a median income in this county, because outside of us, that number for median income goes down 50%. So the thing is, when I look at this, it's skewed to the high end to say, well, if the development, going through the whole thing, if the development is based off of the people living out here, it's skewing what you can do in the cities or can't do in the cities. And it's allowing those costs to escalate to a point that they're pricing people out of those areas, and you're not going to get any development in those areas because people aren't going to be able to afford to come in. So if you're trying to do that, I see this, again, it's flawed in that way. It doesn't take the fact of where the popular demographic is that is driving the numbers to these median numbers within the county. In my estimation, when I do the numbers,
Yeah.
it throws those numbers out, so it gives you a misconception of what you can do in certain areas versus what truly is there. Because to me, in the city or outside those cities, if you're not building homes for people with a $40,000 income, what are you trying to draw in there? You're not going to draw the people unless they're coming in for medical or something else to support the other people in the area. So that's what I'm saying. There's the whole plan has flaws in it like that when you're trying to look at the whole thing, unless you're good.
Even without the plan, though, if you pull up realty.com right now and you look for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house sitting on an acre, you're probably close to $500,000 if there's any on the market.
Oh, sure.
That's not the person that's
No.
providing the services for us. That's not the person in the factory working for us. You know,
That's my point.
well, and to your point, though, unless the land is affordable for the developer to come in and purchase to build those lower priced homes, then the government doesn't control what developers build. Builders are going to build whatever they can get the most bang out of their buck for.
Well, I came from Williamson County, and I saw this happen in Williamson County in 10 years. And it drove the people that lived in Williamson County out of the county.
Sure.
Because they couldn't afford to live there anymore.
And that's where we're at.
Within the span of 10 years.
And that's where we're at. And so when you start looking at, and there's some scenario planning in the plan, you probably read that. When you start looking at what, right now in the county proper, you can only build a house on 20,000, a minimum lot size, if it's flat, is 20,000 square foot lot size. So that's basically 2 units per acre if it's flat.
All right.
Not a lot of flat land in East Tennessee, but out of that, by the time you buy that property and you spend $35,000 on a piece of property and you build a 1,500 square foot home at $180, $200 a square foot, or $230, depending on what you're building, that's not attainable either. And so if you're not allowing growth to happen around the fringes of the city where the infrastructure's at, what you're encouraging is people to go out, buy a lot, bring in a modular home, put it up, because that's what they're going to be able to afford. Over the scale of 10, 20 years from now, all the property values are going to be less because there's still not going to be stick-built homes. And what's going to happen is all the other taxes are going to have to be raised to offset those costs because we didn't grow correctly.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay, well, I'm just, that's in this plan too. So the plan does have some flaws, but I think the plan does have some good information and some, this plan is not to fix all, save all. This plan is put in place to educate folks that make decisions, and your leaders in the community hopefully will read it and take in consideration when they make decisions for land use, your property values, your infrastructure. Take that in consideration whenever they're making decisions. That's the intent of the plan. So, thank you for your comments. So, you got more questions? All right, I'm looking forward to them. We'll get to them in a moment. Another section in the plan they went over was retail, the retail side of the house and looking at leakage. Do what? Somebody say something? Okay. We're looking at, in the county specific, $370 million is being leaked out into various other markets. Whereas in Loudon City, there was a gain of 30 million, roughly 31. Lenore City was roughly 64. And then looking at the Knoxville Metro as a whole is 496 million being leaked out into various other things. Yes, sir.
I don't disagree at all. This is a baseline effort. And as my colleague here has pointed out, there are some flaws.
Fair.
One of the flaws I saw on this page is it does not take into account this, unless I'm reading it wrong, the switch to online shopping. So when you go into a Home Depot or a Walmart, because when you've looked at their website and it says in-store 15 units, and you go to the store and they say, yeah, we don't have those here, you have to order them online, then, by the way, I'm not coming back to your store. That leakage I don't see taken into account here.
Yeah, I don't think it takes into the actual retail, the online sector of that. Again, these are just probably generic databases they're buying as a consultant firm. They're making some hypothetical analyses and then coming up with some, answers here. But I think it is a gauge. I think it's something we have to look at as a gauge and take that in consideration. I mean, now when you look for transportation, it's not just trying to plan out transportation for the people who live in the neighborhood. Now you're having to take in consideration how many delivery trucks a day are coming to the neighborhood, right? So things are changing rapidly. You know, from post-COVID to where we're at today, it's if pre-COVID, look at how much online shopping we did as a consumer-based society, and look at it today. I mean, I'm breaking down probably 4 or 5 boxes from the UPS guy every day at my house, and I'm sure you are too. So I think the convenience factor becomes more and more as time goes on, and I think that's we're seeing more and more of that. And it is disrupting some of the bricks and mortar, and I think taking in consideration, I think you're going to see it's going to plateau. I think at some point, and then taper off. Hopefully, yes, sir.
Yeah, the other point on this page too is it talks about the 15-minute drive. And that's part of the federal government HUD drive down on economic development is 15-minute basically development areas for retail and everything else, which is all part of the green agenda, which is part of what's going on in Europe too. And I know Italy is just basically revoking a lot of this. But anyways, on the 15-minute drive, when I started in Williamson County, at 15 minutes I could get to downtown Franklin without a problem.
I remember those days.
Yeah, and economic development came in. Then it took me 35 minutes to get to the same place.
Sure.
So the more you put in.
Probably
like
an hour and 30 minutes nowadays.
Yeah, so the thing is, I mean, this ends up basically saying 15 minutes. We put the people in there, we're going to condense you in an area and you'll have everything you need. Ultimately, getting back to the first point, there's a lot of people probably out here in Loudon County, including myself, moved from those areas to come here because 15 minutes, I can drive into Farragut, certain parts of Farragut, and get
Sure.
anything I want, go to church in Farragut, all that type of stuff. Then it's, 20 minutes, whatever. And that's when my wife and I made decisions. It's like, well, we drive 20 minutes to church now, 25 minutes, and it's farther, but it's still 25 minutes. So, I mean, that's one of the things on here too, is the 15-minute drive trade-off. With development, if you put more and condense it, that drive changes drastically too.
But it's
So-
like most cities, if I'm in a large metropolitan, I want to go 15-minute drive. The restaurant I want to go to is 45 minutes out, right? I mean, so it's never 15 minutes anywhere.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But I'm
in
just
here-
saying as part of the whole thing, if, again, with the survey and looking at the things, is 15 minutes, what does that condense as far as what's important to the people also as far as that goes?
And I think that's addressed back here when it's talking about these town centers.
Yeah.
Trying to create town centers. Town centers are hard to, I mean, retail follows 3 things: rooftops, size of the market, and traffic counts. Okay? Those are the 3 things they follow. And when we get out into areas where the population is still dense enough, but the traffic counts aren't there, it's hard to get that retail to come there. So you have to sometimes subsidize retailers to come to your area.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's a challenge, because some folks don't want to incentivize retailers to come out into the hinterlands to serve the rest
Well, I
of
think
us.
it's more of a challenge now too because of the online stuff. Everybody, COVID drove a lot of people to buy a big percentage to switch their buying habits, so
It has.
that's
And,
not gonna go away.
But I think you're starting to see some of that come back because, even though we're real adaptive as humans, we still like to have that personal touch. And I think you're starting to see people go more and more local. And I think people are being more cognitive of that. I know I certainly am, of trying to go to the store instead of buying it online, just for the convenience factor. Just because it's convenient don't mean it's good. I mean, if that was the case, we'd all eat hot dogs, right? All the time. So, vision and goals, Loudon County, this is why the vision that the plan came out with. Loudon County will remain a dynamic community that values its rural character, rich natural resources, and exceptional quality of life. We will maintain these assets through thoughtful planning and managed residential and economic development that sees a variety of jobs, industries, diversity of housing choices, and vibrant communities. I'd like to tell you that was the case. I can't tell you that's where we're going to be, but it sounds good, and I think that's the intent of the plan, is to start somewhere. Yes, sir.
I've been listening to this, and it brings up an issue that I think we've got here in Loudon County. We have Tellico Village, we have Rarity Bay, we have areas, and we have the rest of Loudon County. All of these studies, and it came up in the housing particularly, are very skewed because of the nature of the issue of who we are. And I think that makes this, no offense, really kind of useless. Yeah, because, we're looking at medians, we're looking at means, taking into account such a widely skewed audience, a widely skewed population. But if you were to take Tellico Village and everything out of this,
Yeah.
it would be a completely different story.
Absolutely.
Or vice versa.
Absolutely.
So this is the problem that you've got here. You're combining apples and oranges rather than comparing them.
And I think that's one of the suggestions it has in the plan, is to do a standalone housing study.
Meaning what? You mean go house by house?
No, it needs to look at taking in more consideration of these segments that you're talking
Oh,
about.
yes, yeah,
and
I
seeing
see what
how
you
the-
mean, yeah.
the-
That's-
it's not segments, I would say more sections of the county and how that plays in with the bigger side, the bigger picture. I can't tell you who's going to fund that, though.
No.
Because that becomes a question. I mean, this was 100% funded, or I probably couldn't have got this far with this plan, to be honest with you.
But, and I appreciate all the effort you put into this, but quite honestly, whenever I see this, I suddenly realize we're dealing with two different animals here.
It is two different animals, and I think that's one of the things, I think it's important for both animals to understand each other, but I think we're not there yet. And I
So-
think that's kind of the intent of this.
So the $64,000 question is, if this is so skewed, why should we pay, no offense, but why should we pay attention to it? Is it meaningless?
It is
I
not
begin to
meaningless.
think I don't know.
I think it provides you with the information in the back of what needs to go next. And that's really what this is, of identifying, what plans we have in this area are over 23 years old.
Yeah. A good example, I'm going to use the example of the housing here.
Yeah.
Okay, you talked about the housing, the mean price was blah, blah, blah. You'd be much better off looking at the most occurring price of a house in a neighborhood, not mean median mode. That would at least give you a better idea. But at the moment, what you have here is, okay, the average house price is 300, 400, 500,000. Okay, that's here where we've got some $1, $2, $3 million houses. That just brings the entire curve over so far that the documents that you prepare, if you're preparing it to other agencies, is meaningless. Especially if you're going to a development group where you're looking for funding for low-income housing, they're going to try and say, well, your average house price,
I can't hear you. Can you speak up a bit?
No, I'm going to say, if you're going to go to an agency looking for funding for low-income housing, this is not helping you.
This is not what this
I
document's
know,
for.
but it's what's going to be looked at when you're using these numbers. It's looking at development.
That's not what, I understand what you're saying, but that's not what this document is about. This document is really about just a snapshot of the things we don't have and the things people want. And it doesn't pave the road to how to achieve it. It's just simply, here's where we're at, and here's what people are asking for.
But are you going to be using this as a guideline for things we want to achieve?
I will not, no. I mean, it has in the back of the recommendations, you need a comprehensive plan. Bottom line, you do not have a comprehensive plan in this county. You do not, your urban growth boundary plan is over 20 years old. It was done in 2000. And the plan that's in place, no one looks at it. And you don't have a planner, first of all, in the county. You have a codes official.
So what is the Loudoun County Commission's opinion on this?
I can't answer that. When I went to them, they said, thank you for the information.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
You're welcome. We can skip to that section if you'd like to.
sorry, I just
Yeah. to
bring it up there.
I think the thing is, it's not useless. Again, it's the first plan that anybody's done in a long time. And again, no one has to get behind it. But I think it's important to understand that it's, again, the baseline for the lack of planning we have, if you will.
Maybe I'm using the term useless was the wrong term. It wasn't useless. it was kind of meaningless in the big picture of what we're looking at here. So I think that may be a way to put it. I'm not useless, but it's kind of meaningless in the reality of what we're dealing with here with the two rapidly different communities. Okay, thank you.
Yep. No. You know, again, there's two conversations happening in the county. One is a no growth and one is a managed growth. I mean, that's something that's continued to happen, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. You know, you can put your head in the sand and hope development doesn't happen, but it's going to happen. The best thing you can do is try to manage it. Your documents are so old, they're archaic. And so continuing to ignore that doesn't help anybody. Again, with the housing, I mean, you just got up and somebody said, hey, we don't have enough housing, you know, there's two ends of the spectrum. This kind of rehashes this stuff over and over, but, you know, at the end of the day, it does look at some of the things that the land use patterns need to address that they currently don't. You do not have a medium density in the county right now. You either have low, ag, or manufacturing, basically. So a couple years ago, there was planned unit developments in the county, and you could build 9 units per acre, given obviously there was infrastructure in place. Then it got changed by the county commission to had to be on 5 acres, okay? Then it got changed to 2.5 units per acre. Then it got changed to completely, they took it out of the book now. So you can't really have a densified a dense development anywhere in the county proper. It has to be in one of the cities with the way the ordinances, the land use is today. Again, we're trying to encourage larger lots, regardless if the infrastructure is there to support the density that makes sense and the roads that make sense. Talks about agricultural land. It does talk about the need to preserve that in the study. Talks about the municipalities wanting to grow versus the counties not wanting to grow. Two scenarios. Again, the conventional growth of where you're at today, keep up what you're doing, versus more of a focused growth, looking at where infrastructure is already at, where the roads are already at, trying to take in consideration, density needs to happen where it's around areas that have the services versus where there are no services. Questions on that one? Single-family residential development produces the greatest fiscal loss because it demands high infrastructure and serves cost, but provides low tax revenue per acre. Somebody said this is flawed. It depends on how big your house is, right? It depends on the property taxes that are collected from it. Mixed-use development combines the infrastructure efficiency and medium-density residential developments with added revenue, benefit, and commercial tax base. Again, if you want to have a Target, if you want to have a Chili's out in the village, I mean, it's all about the three things: the rooftops, the traffic counts, and the market itself. This is the town centers. I think the gentleman back there, Gary, was mentioning wanting to have more town center type activities. Oh, my map messed up. That's really where you're trying to focus in on the major populations that exist. And in this one, you see the little town center there. I mean, sorry for the bad slide. Other things in the plan it talked about is walkability, mobility, trying to, one of the things missing that we don't have, I would like to see an overall countywide greenway, blueway plan. That's something that's needed here. I mean, I know you guys do a great job of having internal plans and trails and things of that nature, but it doesn't really get out the side of, there's no one plan that encompasses all those documents, and we need one. without a plan, you're not going in the right direction. Everybody's doing their own thing. So, again, just talking about reinforcing the community centers, identifying the workforce housing. Here's the one I really want to get to. Yes, sir.
Going back to the community centers and stuff like that, okay? You show local communities like your local businesses. One of the things that is happening right now in Berry Farms up in Williamson County is they've basically, again, through incentives, and it's a big news, the news has made it all over Tennessee, that is they're bringing In-N-Out burgers and headquartering them in Berry Farms. At the same time, there's a local burger shop that's got three burger places. They've got one of the best burgers in Franklin and Williamson County. And that business has been in business for 15 years. They're not getting any support financially or that, but the taxpayers are paying for the corporate headquarters from a California business to come into town and put up their first facility and everything else and bring people in. So that is, through this type of plan, I see the same type of thing, is the local retailers that are here that are struggling right now to survive in a lot of cases will be forced out fairly quick when you do any of this stuff, because even in these development centers, because there's a good picture of one that you didn't put up here, that's on page 42. This is exactly what Berry Farms looks like. That's in Williamson County, that's Stevens Valley in Williamson County. And these houses run $1.2 to $1.5 million. So these developments do not bring in or support, again, local residents that are struggling to have some place to live, because these things are expensive as crap. And we couldn't afford to move from where we were into one of these places, and they're put side by side. They're 4,500 square foot homes that are put on a postage stamp,
Sure.
Type of thing.
So let me ask you a question.
So I'm just saying that's, these centers, like even you're looking at, if you're downtown Lenore, that type of thing, is the local businesses can't afford the storefronts that they're in today. Once this happens, that storefront cost goes through the roof for them to be able to stay there. And so they end up being run out of business. So that quaint community disappears within a short number of years. That's my only point. I mean, downtown Franklin is not anywhere near what downtown Franklin was. I mean, so it's just not the same anymore. You still have certain things down there that look the same, but ultimately it's survival. It becomes very difficult for them to survive at something. So
Prime example, most of the time in urbanized areas and older downtowns, you see the thrift shops, you see the antique stores, you see things of this nature. Kingsport's a prime example of that. Back 20 years ago, that's what we had downtown. And so what happened is gentrification in the area, people started moving there, they started investing there, they started redoing the facades on the buildings, and it did drive up the cost of the renters. And so what happened is it did displace the antique shops, and they had to find other places. But what came in their place were restaurants. It was shops that weren't antique related, because that was why the antique shops were there, because of the cheap rent. I think just like consumer-based products that we're talking about here, let me ask you a question. Do you shop local, or do you ever go to somewhere like a Costco or a Sam's? So when you start looking at,
no, I don't go to Costco.
well, I'm just using that as an example, because those are the dollars that are going outside of our community instead of the ones that are being provided locally. And you're right, some of these mom and pops are great, but if we don't support them as consumers, then they can't survive. There's no way for them to survive.
Understood. But my point on this, I think, is the fact that these type of developments, a lot of us have moved here, okay? And I don't want to speak for everybody, but I mean, a lot of us have moved here, and you move to these areas because you're quaint. And we're also understand that we're visitors into the area. We're becoming residents, but we don't want to displace necessarily the local residents. That's not our goal by coming here. And the goal is, how do you work together to keep them in business? It's, I hate seeing some of these people
Sure.
in some of these areas. They've been in business for 50, 60 years, and they're and these are, I love going to some of those places. That's to
Me
grab
too.
a burger or something like that. Those are the best places.
Did you ever go to the
And-
Z Fish House?
What's that?
The Z Fish House? Favorite, man.
Yeah.
I'd have people come from all over the state. First place I would take them. You're right. I mean, those are the kind of places that I miss. You guys are really unique in so many ways. I mean, when one of you said we're our own animal, and you are your own animal. I look at you more, people want to classify you as a retirement community. I don't. I classify you as a resort town, even though you're not a town.
I don't know if we're a resort town per
Well-
se, but we are an active community. There's no doubt about it.
But look, you're where everybody wants to be. At the end of the day, you have the lakes, you have all this activity, you have the greenways. You moved here for a reason, and hopefully it wasn't to die, right? You moved here to enjoy the years of your life that you had. You've worked hard, I'm sure, for the money you had, and this is where you ended up. And I know what you're saying. I don't want to end up this being where I left, because that's the reason I moved here. I'm just putting words in your mouth, and stop me if I'm wrong. But that's not what we're trying to do with this plan. I mean, this plan, I see the Telco Village as a resort, and I think it's different from me because I have a planning background, but I think you have to build on that. I think this plan is not for Telco Village specifically, and I think again, it's trying to put everybody in the same page in the same book, and it's not real fair. And I think we're there. I mean, I think I understand that. Yes, sir.
So, like my colleague, I have pages earmarked that I was prepared to address this evening. But as I listen to you, and I think back on my own career, which included planning and zoning, corporate site selection, and as a member of an economic development committee of the Midwest Conference of State Legislatures, what I see here is you've tried to mix too many things in one document. So here's my take. On the one hand, there's a call from the powers that be. We want more jobs. We want more investment in our county. You've taken on the responsibility to respond to that. And when you speak to site selection managers at different corporations, you had your list of 3, they have their list of 10. And you're going through their list trying to be responsive with positive items that will attract them here. And you found a variety of shortcomings in your ability to be responsive to attract that investment. And you've had this document put together, it reminds me of a municipal economic development plan, not an economic development plan. And
That's fair.
having said that, rather than tear different lines and points and highlights apart, I would posit that as a resident in Tellico Village, and I suspect this is the case also for Wind River and Tennessee National, there's a percentage of us who have come here to live, and there's a percentage of us who have come to find a new home. And for those of us who believe this to be our new home, we want to participate to make the community better. So I heard what you said earlier, that this is the living document, it's a starting point. So my question, and maybe this isn't appropriate, rather than go through this page by page by page, how about a discussion of how we help you build the document and the plan that you need to present both? You've got two audiences.
Sure.
One is those who are elected in their positions, and those who have a wallet full of dollars that they need and want to invest somewhere, and you need to convince them that this is where they need to do it.
I like it.
So,
And I welcome that, and I welcome the offer that you're bringing up. You know, I took this project on because there wasn't a plan, and I felt like there needed to be. We needed something, right? And again, this is the baseline, and when you look at the strategy board, and I'm sure you guys have looked at it, these things cost money. And I don't have the bandwidth to do these things. And if I did, I doubt that the county would want me to do them for them, be honest with you, okay? So I don't know who's going to pay for a comprehensive plan. It's unfortunate that, you know, it's easier to plan off the cuff than it is to have a document that we all go by. And I think that unfortunately that's kind of where we're at in this area, is no one really wants to stick with put a game plan in place and stick with it. You know, when you start looking at the 20-year plan that's in place, no one has required developers to stick to the plan. You know, a lot of stuff that was zoned commercial or zoned manufacturing or zoned agriculture, it was just catch can, and you got what you got. You know, it's I was saying, you get what you get and don't pitch a fit, right? But I think when you go back and you look now, that document is so outdated that it needs to be addressed. And unless you put pressure on those who make decisions, because you put them in office, that's the bottom line. I mean, those are the ones who have the purse strings. Those are the ones who can pay for these items that we want and desire and need. Sir.
Oh. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now that Margaret's got her phone under control. Anyway, just a broad stroke here on the plan.
Sure.
Obviously, the plan needs to be redone, or you need urban, rural, Tellico Village, Lenore City, whatever you want to do, but, it needs a whole lot of tweaking.
Okay.
And speaking of, but I listened to the conversation earlier about shop local versus big box store. If you've ever been to Highlands, North Carolina, you go up and down their Main Street, the city council, I assume, has basically made that a no big box store community. You come in here, you got to be.
Yeah, South Carolina. I mean, I can name tons of cities that's the
Yeah.
case. I mean, they're
and
everywhere, right?
And they're thriving.
Yes,
And so,
absolutely.
Anyway, just a off the cuff comment. I want to kind of dig a little bit into the weeds.
Sure.
When you're negotiating, bringing business, industry, whatever, I assume it's prevalent or at least commonplace for the government entity to offer incentives for them to come to your particular county or your particular location, and that is, I assume that's widespread. Am I correct?
It is correct, yeah.
Okay.
So you're competing with your neighboring counties, states, jurisdictions, yes.
Okay. So during the negotiations, then I assume the businesses make commitments to, produce either a certain amount, hire a certain amount of employees.
Yes.
Okay. So when
And
it's all,
invest a certain amount, and usually there's three criteria, the same way the state of Tennessee incentivized the project based on three criteria. One is total capital expenditures, that everything that's taken in your personal property as well as your real property. It's looking at, moving dirt, whatever that total number is, that's category one. Two, It's total number of jobs you're going to create. It's estimated. All these are estimates. I mean, but you do put it in a document, and there is performance measures
Right.
to
That's where I'm.
put them, hold them accountable whenever they don't hold up their end of the deal. So the third thing is wages. We look at wages. I look at to see the average wage. I don't just take them at their word for the average wage. I want to know what, if you've got 100 jobs and 50 of them are making $10 an hour on the line, I want to see that number too. So there's a lot of back and forth before we just throw a deal on the table.
So once the deal is done, and, all that's been agreed to, who monitors that to make sure that those, commitments are being honored?
Right. So let me back up about 4 steps.
Okay.
EDA does not have the authority, nor do we have the ability to provide a tax abatement. That does not come through this office. We negotiate the deal, but ultimately it depends on, there's 3 industrial development boards in this county. There's the county IDB, Lenore City IDB, and the City of Loudon IDB. The city authorizes or delegates, if you will, the IDB to offer the tax incentive. And so the city officials are the ones who decide what that looks like. The IDB is the mechanism for it happening and actually processing the documents and making sure, and actually the property itself and all the assets of that company are deeded over to the IDB. At the end of that lease, those properties, that lease ends, they get deeded back to the owner of the property or the company or whoever it is. So EDA does not have any authority.
Okay. But who does the actual monitoring? IDB
The
or
IDB
county government?
does the
Based
monitoring.
on what authority they've been given by the county government?
And it's all outlined in the lease document.
So how do you, as an IDB, not you, but how does the IDB, how do they actually measure that? Do they look at tax documents, 990s? What do they look at?
Sometimes we do. A lot of times what we'll look at is whatever the dollars that are, the taxes that are abatement are attached to the number of positions created. If they don't create those positions, there's a dollar figure there, and they pay additional money. So at the end of the day, if they don't pay that.
They're penalized if they
They're-
don't.
Yes, sir, they're penalized. That's.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. Thank
yeah.
you.
Yes, sir.
I got to run, but
Yeah.
just tell me about China. The
It's on
short
the other side
version.
it's on the other side of the world.
Okay.
I honestly don't know how I've been affiliated with China or that project. What I can tell you is the developer that originally bought the property wanted to talk to the city about an annexation. I introduced them to the city, and after that, I don't know what happened. So that's my affiliation with the project.
Well, that was on our agenda today to talk about that, so that's the reason I'm here.
Yeah.
So do we have a map of all the properties that are, do we have a map? And then who is this developer?
So I don't know who the first developer that purchased the company was Walton Group. They are a company that purchased a lot of tracts of land for Horton Homes. I don't know who the Chinese, like I said, I'm not affiliated with that
Okay,
whatsoever.
yeah, that's all
But,
I came for. 'Cause-
I would encourage you to Google Tennessee tax map or go to the Mike Campbell's website for the tax assessor. Probably can click on there and figure out what tracts are identified by whatever that organization is.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't have any more information
Okay.
on that, but.
All right, thank you.
Jack, help me here. I think I know where this goes, but one question I want to make sure I don't forget to ask. When was the last study or survey done? How old was it before this one was done?
I honestly don't
Okay.
have that information, to be
That's all
honest
right.
with you.
It's
So,
been a while.
I've been in this position 7 years. When I got here, we weren't doing workforce development. We were only focused, the agency was only focused on 3 topics. That was the transportation, the grants, and of course, the manufacturing recruitment side. So I don't have a good answer for that. Again, our documents are older. We know that. The ones the county's using older, the ones the cities are using is older. They're all outdated. plans that all need to be updated.
I can identify with what you're saying about the comprehensive plan. The community that I lived in Florida 40 years ago had a comprehensive plan, made a big difference in the development of the area. And so the comprehensive plan, to take a look at the fact we don't have a county planner, through the burning of Tenassi and the rebuild necessary for Tenassi, we realize that some of the building codes are outdated as well and need to be brought into date. And so for all of this, am I correct in thinking we go to our county commissioners? That's where it starts, and they have got to take action on this. Would that be correct?
That would be my assessment. I think that's a fair statement.
So the next county commission election, there are some issues to be brought forward for candidate night.
You know, the thing about the comprehensive plan, it addresses, like the gentleman said, I don't want this. This is the reason I moved here. That's where you're doing the public input to address those areas where you don't want that. You know, it's like most things. You can't keep out everything, but you can certainly identify the area where that needs to go and the
Right.
areas that don't need, it doesn't need to go.
Right.
And so I think that's what we need.
Well, even TVA has just had their 10-year replanning.
Land use update. Yep.
Exactly. And so without a plan, you end up anywhere. With a plan, you can hopefully have a chance of where you know where you're going. Okay.
And that's, the sad truth is, most people put plans, just like I said when I started this conversation, I want this to become a living plan, because if you just develop something and you stick it on a shelf, it's not going to get utilized. And so if you're not continually updating that, times change. I mean, things change, our patterns change. I mean, there's tons of things that have to be continually updated to make it a good document.
Okay.
I just want to say I appreciate the candidness today with the plan, because I do want the feedback. And I wish that I would have had the money and the time to have come out and done a better job. I think it is, like I said, you guys are a very different and unique and a great animal. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity here that a lot of people don't take advantage of. And I think I don't know how we better integrate the village with the rest of the community, but I think it's something that, is good and needs to happen, and vice versa. So, but I'll entertain any more questions if I love the Chinese one. That was good. Yes, sir.
So the last individual sentence I will take issue with.
Okay.
So on page 51, the very bottom, it says Loudon County has a highly educated population, 86% high school diploma or equivalent. So last night I was at an event with the sheriff, and I asked, what's recruitment like? And he said, Mike, I've got high school diploma holding graduates that can't read, that can't write, and they can barely speak. If you look at state test data for Loudon County alone, the conclusion I draw is that 60% of the children exiting high school in Loudon County are functional illiterates. And I don't see any of that data built into this document from, which is available on a state website and available to the folks who put this together.
Yeah, they probably didn't want to put that black on us, honestly.
But if you don't do it, nothing's going to change.
No, I know, and I understand what you're saying. And here's something, the pandemic changed, and I'm not blaming the pandemic, but, look at how many kids.
Excuse me. If you look back at the state data
Yeah.
to 2016.
Oh,
All right? I don't buy I understand the pandemic issue, I've read about it.
Yeah.
But test scores in Loudon County going back to 2016 are abominable.
I suggest you run for the school board, sir.
Well, we had a candidate here, and we had a discussion, and we will continue to discuss it.
I can tell you from a workforce development standpoint, some of the things I'm trying to do, for what it's worth, is we do during Manufacturing Week, which is in October, we actually bring our high schoolers to the venue, and we have our manufacturers set up. The agency actually buses in kids from Greenback, the county schools and the city schools, to show them jobs that are here. And there's a reason for that. It's not just about the ones that, and I'm not getting into what you're talking about from the literacy side of the house, or the academia side. But we do that for a couple of reasons. A, nobody really knows unless somebody, your relative works there, nobody knows what's being made here. And B, whether or not they do a post-education or they go into a four-year school or what that looks like, it's important for them to know there's somewhere to move back to have a job. And so that's one thing we do. Last year we started work-based learning. We started working with our manufacturers to offer summer interns to our kids. And we're talking 2 kids here. At the end of the day, we had 5 industries participate. Since they're under 18, a lot of the factories, corporate, won't allow them to work in certain duties. But we're going to continue those efforts. And the other thing we do is we actually, once a year, we take the kids into the manufacturers, those that will allow us. It's important for kids to understand, these things are happening in their backyard. But again, it's also, these are our friends, our families, our relatives that are working here. But again, they can move on, they can go get an engineering degree, but come back home. We're trying to reduce the brain drain, if you will. And so, again, up until 4 years ago, we weren't even doing workforce development in my agency, and no one was. So we're working locally with our CT schools to really promote, the skilled labor side, as well as the old days of people most generations still think of the sweatshop when it comes to manufacturing. You go to like a Del Conca, and there's robots running around everywhere, and the floor is completely clean. I mean, it's climate control. I mean, it's a different type. And so we're trying not just to educate the kids, but the parents. Not everybody is cut out for a 4-year school. And so we're trying to have those conversations. Yes, it is important to read and write. Yes, it's important for those things as well, but I have no control over that. I wish.
Jack, would you please explain the role of the state in the EDA and the county funding, and then how the board is selected and so forth?
Yeah. So back to the interlocal agreement, when we were formed back in 2008, let's skip back to 2000. In 2000, there was a state statute that came out for the planning growth. Matter of fact, same chapter. It's Urban Growth 1101. It said that every county is supposed to have this joint economic development board, or if you had a similar board, you could submit that and it could be approved. And that's what Loudon at the time had. And so the stipulations in the state code said that it was based on population. So everybody's contribution in that organization would participate based on population. So at the time in 2008 when it was formed, the county ended up paying 68% of the budget. Our budget, by the way, is $265,000. We're an office of 2. So you take that 265, the county portion's 177, 68%. The 2 cities, one's at 32,000, the other one's at 39 maybe, and then Committee 100 is about $4,800. And so, rough numbers, guys. I don't have it right off the top of my head. But that's how the breakdown originally. Loudon actually pays more than its population. Simple fact was, back in 2000, again, the county and the city went into a joint venture, an interlocal agreement to buy Center 75, and I'm sure most folks have got wind of Center 75. Center 75 was a farm that somebody had, 230 acres. The county went in 60%, Loudon went in 40%. And so since that city had more industrial property, at the time when they developed the agreement, they felt like Loudon City should invest more. And so that's the reason the numbers are somewhat skewed. In the event that it does ever dissolve, the county is required to have a joint economic development board. And that board is set by certain elected officials. And then there's an 8-member board. One of the members is a Greenbelt owner, and the other one is a member at large. And so the rest are all by appointed or elected, like I said. What I'll leave out there on that one? Yeah,
So on the interlocal agreement issue, so the county just voted Monday night to basically, the county is paying the higher percentage
yes.
in the agreement, and they've been paying that. But when you look at this, I think if the feedback you're getting from here, from being tied closer to the county where we're at, the development plan is heavily skewed towards your city development areas or your municipalities. So the county, on a 5-5 split vote, you can see that the county is dramatically split on this EDA plan. Not only do you have voices here voicing concern on it, there's a high level of concern from the financial perspective. Is the county getting its bang for its buck on the EDA? So that came up on Monday. I just wanted to make sure other people know because I attend those meetings also, but inactive on that.
Yeah, no.
But with that, I mean, I think like everybody said, you have to have a plan. That's the good thing is you always got to try to have a plan to work to. As anybody knows, the plan's only as good as the day it was written, and it changes immediately after that.
Absolutely. This stuff's already
Many of us
dated.
that have been
Yeah.
doing it, so I mean, I commend for having a plan, but at the same time, I think it's been voiced here, there's a lot of concerns with the plan, especially from a Tellico Village or this region area.
Sure.
This can't be looked at the same way as a municipality right now, and I don't want it to be looked at as a municipality personally. I like what we've got here. So again, from that regard, I think there's going to be a lot of eyes looking at this and deeper to see what's going on. And I would make a strong recommendation that if there are going to be local meetings and that type of thing that people should attend, is somehow we get a notification that people here, I think there'd be a good group of people that would show up to those meetings if they definitely know when they're going to happen, so we can voice into there and be part of making sure this does what you're trying to get accomplished and we're trying to get accomplished together.
I appreciate that. I'd like to touch a little bit about, the county getting their money's worth. Anytime a project is located in one of the cities, it's county taxes too. So they're, yeah. So, but I'm just saying that, anytime a project is located, Project Hannon, for example, is a $170 million project. It's going to create 600 jobs. The county got its share of that. There was an incentive offered. We offered them 5 years on one building only. We didn't offer them incentive on the other building. So, we are trying to be conservative when it comes to making offers to companies. And I think that reflects in some of these negotiations that we're doing. The county, school budgets are always, I see in the newspaper recently, school budgets of new schools and all those type of things. Growth comes at a cost, and I know that, you know that, everybody knows that. But just because developments are happening doesn't necessarily mean their kids coming. I mean, this area is a prime example of that.
Kind of refreshes one question I did have, because when you look at the development plan that you have, especially you mentioned in the city areas and stuff like that, and there's a school battle going on right now in Loudon County also with the new school for the needs, is when you talk high density growth in some of these areas, because the part of the plan has high density units going in. I didn't see anything in this plan that talks about the infrastructure as far as the structure to support that from a perspective of all the support elements that are needed with your fire, your police, all the things, because with high density and with what's going on with the border, and I know right now working with the state of Tennessee to try to protect Tennessee's borders from being overflown, grown in those areas is the fact that crime comes, drugs and crime. I know
I'm
loud
sorry, do what? I can't hardly hear you.
crime comes, crime. I mean, drugs and crime. Right now, there's two known, affiliated gangs in Loudon County, in parts of Loudon County. So, I mean, that stuff comes with what's happening. So with that, I mean, again, in the cities, these areas don't have that right now, but it comes with that. So how's that?
With great power
how's that
comes responsibility, right?
How's
It's
that
the Spider-Man
captured in an
or-
economic development? Because that's all costs to the taxpayers.
It
That's
is
extra
all
cost
cost
to
to
the
the taxpayers, but I think you have to go back to the other thing. If you're not growing, you're dying as a community, and that's going to affect your taxes overall anyway. So unless you're growing, your taxes are going to go up because labor goes up, cost of doing business goes up. And so you have to offset that with some level of growth. Again, is that managed growth, or is it just taking it as it comes?
I guess my point is when you entice companies to come in, okay, like Ford and different things, they get a lot of money off their taxes and stuff like that, and they move. In 25 years, when they have to start really paying back, they pick up and move elsewhere. I've moved warehouses, and I mean, you're constantly looking for a new deal when the end of that lease is coming up. You're looking for a new deal because it makes a huge difference on your bottom line. So I think sometimes we got to be careful because some of those buildings end up turning into not what they were originally planned for. And, so if we can kid ourselves and believe it's going to be, the payback is always that way, but I've never seen the payback work out the way the plan says it's going to work out.
I agree with that to some degree, but what I would say is a lot of times after a building is vacant, it's not, especially depending on how the economy is at the time of that vacancy, another business will come in and scoop it up. I mean, that's one of the things we've not had any building inventory in this county in probably the last 4 years. And so every project that comes through the door that, do what?
This is a hot area right now.
Yeah, well, we're up and down the I-75 corridor. So we're in between, obviously Maine and Louisiana. So you're going to continue to see growth happen. But I don't think you're seeing anybody giving any 20-year tax abatements. I mean, I don't know of anyone that's doing that anymore. I think everybody that I know that's doing these things are trying to be more conservative. A lot of times when tax incentives are offered, it's not as simple as just here's a bag of money. If you're building that building and there's got to be $4 million worth of infrastructure brought up to, let's just say, some lift stations and, some transformers and things of that nature, that's what those, no, let me finish. So those are sometimes what those are offered for, but they also, the running that line to that location helps everybody down through there. So it's not as simple, we are gaining more than just this one entity getting on the system. And I said, that's something, especially if it's a sewer or a lift station that they're putting in place, everybody benefits from.
Yeah, my point on when somebody comes in, a lot of the plan requirements that's put together to justify the tax abatements and that as well, we're going to bring in 1,000 jobs.
Yeah.
After, 10 years. 10 years goes by, and they've got 55 people still working there, and so you're not getting the tax revenue you were planning and everything else. I mean, the reality is business is always going to put together a very optimistic plan, too.
Sure.
And they're not held accountable for not hitting those goals.
No, that's not true. That's what this gentleman over here asked me. And so they are held accountable in this county. I mean, I don't know about I can't speak for other areas,
Well, that's
but
a good point.
I can assure you they're held accountable
Well,
here.
that's a good point, because, I mean, if we're holding them accountable, I think people need to understand that, because that happens constantly. You see that happening in a lot of places, so.
Yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think other states and other communities, they are desperate for, sometimes, and I'm not going to mention any communities close by, they're desperate for large manufacturing companies, and they give the farm away, quite frankly. We don't do that here. And so there's actually a methodology that goes into quantifying what we're doing, as well as performance measures in place to make sure we're getting our money's worth. Time? Okay. Any more questions real quick? I appreciate the opportunity. Obviously, you know where the plan's at because you've read it, and I appreciate the comments today. It is constructive, and like I said, I hope that we can take this plan and at some point rework it, as you said, tweak, rework, or just scrap it, and hopefully somebody will give us some money. You guys got any money you want to give EDA? We'll start a new plan, and I'll let you pick the consultant firm this time, and we can try to do better. But
Give you some money if you can give us 31 million for what we do.
right, all right, that's the deal, But you know, when you look at EDA and the county, you know, you as Tellico Village, you have the right to ask for us to write grants for you too. I mean, it's not unheard of. And so there is services we will provide you if you ask. No one asks. So please keep that in mind going forward. Thank you again.
As you can see, this topic is not for the faint of heart, any more than a budget meeting is or zoning meetings. And so, but you do find the people who are paying attention to this realize the impact of what's going on, what it could mean, and why it's important to have these meetings. And it's a valuable thing that we are having this recorded so that it can be viewed by people who are not able to be here tonight. Being with the sheriff last night, that's good to know. He was one of the people I saw last night, and some people told me they had 2 and 3 engagements to go to from where I was, and it made me very grateful. I only had one thing to go to, so it is a very busy time of year. I thank you for being here to listen to this topic, and Jack, thank you very much for taking the hard questions, but as you know, that's your job, and so so you've got the hide for it. I also want to thank Kevin Critch for his audiovisual tonight, so that this is recorded, and thank you all for coming. Any questions for me? Okay, just 1 or 2 announcements. Please pay attention to the telegram after the holidays are over, because what you're going to start seeing from the Government Affairs Committee is going to be announcements about early voting begins February 14th. Primary day is March 5th, and so you need to pay attention to where your precinct is, where you go to vote. Early voting, you can probably vote almost any place in the county. The primary day, you must vote where your precinct is, so that becomes important. And remember, January 10th, Kahidi Clubhouse will have a candidate forum for district attorney, has 2 announced people. I believe there may be 3 running for district attorney. They have a new school board position open, never been filled before, so they have 2 candidates for that. And so it'll be very interesting listening to these candidates at that forum. And so we will keep you informed throughout the year as to what's happening during the election process, which primary is for which candidate. The March primary is for your county level candidates. The August primary is for your state and federal candidates. And of course, the November election is your presidential. And so that's our wrap up. Thank you for coming.